I'm Louise. I'm just going to do two things. Hopefully so you can see my presentation. So just 1 second. And then the second thing I'm going to do, because I am possibly the world's oldest TikTok creator, is I'm going to also press record on my own video so I can get some snippets for TikTok. So can people see my screen? Can you see my presentation? Okay, brilliant. Here I am. Hopefully people can see that now. Please put in the chat if you can see me. As I was saying, I am one of the world's oldest TikTok creators. That's probably why I got all the tech wrong, but can you see it now? Fantastic, fantastic. So we are going to get started. My name's Louise Thompson. For those of you I haven't met, I will introduce myself in a second. But what I want to say to you first is think about a world where AI is reshaping the way we work, and maybe we're questioning some things as a result in internal comms. Employee expectations are evolving beyond even what we thought might have been possible 5 years ago. Spoiler alert, not in the right direction. And change management feels like it's the only constant. Think about those three things and then think about your challenge and your opportunity as an internal communications professional and a leader to help lead your organization and your people through those massive changes. So that's what I want us to think about today. How can you lead change comms, and how can you lead change when actually the narrative you're shaping for others may also impact you? So if you've been through any kind of corporate restructure or corporate reorganization, you may well have been in that position. And I've been in that position in my career too. I was asked to lead the comms for a change, but that change impacted me. And again, not in a positive way. That is a really tough gig for any internal communications leader. And it's what I want to talk you through today. So I'm going to share some insights from my career of delivering these kind of complex, high stakes changes. But I'm also going to tackle the really human side of the role as well. How to protect your own resilience, your well-being, and your team's well-being through what is a really pressure-filled time and environment when AI is driving rapid change and employee expectations are shifting dramatically. So my name is Louise. I have worked in comms and PR for more than 20 years. I'm Louise Thompson. You can find me on LinkedIn. I have been a director of communications several times, including in the National Health Service in England. I'm going to use some of those experiences today. I've also worked agency side for many, many years. I am now a leadership coach, and what I do is support people like you all around the world. I want all of us working in comms to reach our full potential as leaders. And in today's world, this means being really clear-eyed about the role, about the value we need to drive, but also being equipped and feeling empowered to lead change without burning out. And that's what we're going to talk through today. So what happens when the change you are asked to communicate also impacts you on a very human and personal level? So I mentioned that I used to work in the National Health Service in England. I was a director of communications at a local set of hospitals, and I was on the board. There was a proposed merger. This is going back several years now, and spoiler alert, the merger did happen, and it happened very successfully. There was a proposed merger with another set of local hospitals. And if you're in England, and even if you're not, you will know that the National Health Service means so much to people here. It is a publicly funded public service, and it means a lot. The stakes are very, very high. In fact, you could say the stakes are life and death, because you are working with people's health every single day. And as a director of communications, you have part of that leadership responsibility. So as a comms leader, and I was the internal communications director as well as external, I really had to think about how can I be at my best here to lead people through this change. So to lead our staff, teams, patients, local communities, MPs, everybody that you could think of that may have a view on local healthcare services changing, I had to be at my best to help lead that change. It's probably one of the biggest examples from my career of a time when I was really asked to step up as a communications leader. There was a lot of pressure. a lot of responsibility, but it was also a huge opportunity to show the strategic value of communications. But at the same time, I was also feeling pretty vulnerable and pretty unmoored, as were my team. So if you've been through any type of corporate restructure or merger, you'll know that some of the outcomes may well be impact on jobs. To put it bluntly, you don't need two of everything at the leadership level when you're merging an organization. So my own future wasn't certain, but I still had to set a course and set an example as a leader leading people through this change from a communications perspective. Now, let me tell you, that is not an easy circle to square. It's really difficult, and that's what I want to focus on today. Internal communications is so important at times of change, but it's also really hard to do that as a leader without burning out or, quite frankly, losing yourself in the process. I'm going to share some of my insights and some of my story with you today in the hopes that it helps you if you're going through something similar. I'm just going to turn off my little TikTok video. You can find me later on TikTok. I'll show you how. So let's talk about pressure points for internal comms leads. And if you want to vote in a poll, if you go to your blue chat section, next to the chat, there should be a poll section. And I think ContactMonkey are going to put a poll up for us now. Let me know through the poll which of these pressure points is really kind of landing for you at the moment if you're working in internal comms. Might be one, might be all of them. What feels like relentless organizational change. AI redefining the comms landscape and perhaps thinking about, we're made to think about and reflect on our own value. Oh, Regina said the poll is closed and not working, guys, at ContactMonkey. So maybe if we can open the poll just to let people vote while I continue going through the pressure points. So this is what I want you to vote in when the poll opens. Relentless pace of organizational change, AI redefining the comms landscape, employee engagement and trust declining. I'm going to talk a lot more about that today. Limiting stereotypes around our value as internal comms professionals. What do I mean by limiting stereotypes? Guys, I think you have to refresh and you will find the poll is open, so please do that. Limiting stereotypes are the stories that perhaps we tell ourselves, or sometimes the stories other people tell us about comms just being tactical and not strategic, about comms not belonging around that leadership table. That can add a lot of pressure when we are asked to step up. And finally, pressure around budgets and headcount. I mean, we've all been there, haven't we? We have all been there. So let me know in the poll. I daren't refresh because I don't want to lose my presentation, but I will have a check. I'll have a check. But let me know what resonates for you. It might be all of these things. It might be one above the other. You can obviously chat about that in the chat box as well. But the point is, being an internal comms leader right now is really complex. It's challenging. It's difficult. And there is often unseen and unacknowledged pressure on us as internal comms leaders. So we really need to think about how we are going to find a way through. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to find a way through this pace of change. We're going to release, hopefully, some of that pressure, and you can walk away with some strategic insights, a little bit of relatability for me in terms of everything that I went through and what I can share with you, but also some practical ways that you can step up in internal comms to prove your value. And Madeleine, thank you so much for your question, by the way. The question from Madeleine is, how do you all communicate constant change without destroying morale? If it's okay, Madeleine, let's capture those questions. ContactMonkey is going to help us capture the questions. We're going to come to them at the end because I may answer it as we go through. And if I haven't, or you don't think I have sufficiently, you can challenge me on it and we can go through it again and I'll answer all the questions together. But please keep asking questions, guys, and we will capture those. You can vote on them at the end as well. So let's get into it. What I want to talk to you about today, as it said on the tin, the 3 S's of change. So what are the 3 things that I am asking you to keep your eye on, keep your focus on, and apply your skills and expertise to as internal communications professionals when you're asked to lead change? So the first one is strategy. Tell me about a time in the chat, or you may be nodding your head and laughing at what I'm about to say. Think about The first time you have got your eyes as an internal comms professional, you have got your eyes on a new company strategy, organizational strategy, a redesign, a reorg, something like that, a strategy document. Tell me what you think the first time you read it and it's given to you. You're probably yawning and you're probably thinking inside, oh my gosh, there is a lot of work to do here. Dry, Taylor says. Dry is the word. It's often dry. It's not that the content isn't there, that the goals aren't strategic. It's not that there's not ambition in the strategy, but it's just a bit, it's full of data perhaps, but not a lot of insight. It might be directionally clear, but it's not compelling. And it doesn't give everyone a compelling vision of the future that you can get everybody to at best engage with, or at the very least understand. And what it's lacking is the one thing that comms leaders know is the thing to inject a bit of life and a bit of meaning into your company's priorities. And that's you. That's your skill as an internal comms leader. So I want you to take that away today. Your input, your expertise, your experience, your skill, bringing these organizational priorities to life. So as you embark on a journey of change in your own organization, perhaps think about where you are in that journey. Again, if you want to share in the chat, I can see people doing that. Please do so, because the more we share about these challenges, the better. Think about these things. How early can you get involved as an internal comms leader in the strategy discussions? The earlier, the better, in my opinion, as the strategy takes shape. What's the speed of change that's required? I mean, think about AI and how fast that's moving. How fast do we need to move and why? As Trish says in the chat, energy and relevance is key. What can you bring to the strategy discussions to illuminate the collective purpose and vision? How are you going to simplify these complex ideas for human understanding and engagement and relate it to your audience? How can you ask the one question that you know all your stakeholders are going to ask, which is, all together now, why? Why are we doing this? If we can understand why, we have a chance at getting on board with it. So change management is a massive opportunity for those of us working in internal communications, because it proves that we can lead, that we're not just messengers, and it really starts with strategy. And in my time in the National Health Service, leading this merger process from a comms perspective, this was exactly what I had to do, because the logic for this merger was sound. It was about cost efficiency, getting rid of duplication of services. That is not compelling or meaningful in any way to local people, because the NHS is something that local people hold very dear to their hearts, and it's all about local services. So you can't sell something like that on efficiencies alone. And that's where I got involved as a comms leader. I worked with the exec team, which I was a part of, and all of our stakeholders on a meaningful narrative that brought these priorities to life for patients, staff, and communities. Your next S is, you've probably guessed it from what I've just said, it's stakeholders. Of course it is. Who's on the receiving end of this change? How will the change affect them? What do you need them to think, feel, and do as a result? Your stakeholders are where your change comms will live and die. And this is your perfect opportunity to put your leadership skills into action. And I'll tell you why. So I'm a huge advocate for AI. I think there is so much that it can do for us. I use it daily in my coaching business. It can make us more efficient, can help us speed up and refine those repetitive tasks that we need to get done so that we can focus on the big stuff. And where I want you to think about and find your leadership edge working in internal comms is the big stuff. It's the soft skills. These are what is really required to lead and navigate our stakeholders through change. So think about things like contextual awareness, good judgment, empathy, curiosity. These are all skills that you need to embody as an internal communications leader that AI hasn't quite got them yet, and you have. So you need to use them with your stakeholders when you're leading them through change, because they will come to you. And my stakeholders in the National Health Service came to me, came to the executive team with so many feelings, emotions, feedback, judgments, insights, recommendations, questions. It was so much, and we really had to deploy all of our collective leadership skill to help them navigate through what felt like, and frankly was, a monumental change. And we also know, don't we, that employee engagement is pretty much on the floor these days. And it's no surprise. I'm sure everybody here has read the Edelman Trust Barometer, where they talked about being in an age of grievance. Our trust in politics, in the news, in organizations and leaders is at an all-time low. So you need to engender trust with your stakeholders. And that involves meeting them where they are in their emotional journey, not just where you want them to be on your change cycle process map. Where are they? Where are you meeting them? How are you meeting them? Are you listening to them? Are you listening to understand? And are you building trust through being transparent and consistent in your messaging and in your internal communications activities through change? It's a huge opportunity for us to engender trust through the messages, the opportunities, and the channels that we choose to use. And in the public sector, working in the National Health Service, I can tell you that stakeholders, you know, they are what will make your change live or die. You can't do it without them. And they had very strong feelings. So we had to work together to build that trust. So you're probably thinking at this stage, Louise, this is a lot. You're asking us to do a lot. And I am. And this is where the third S comes in. And it's about self. Have to protect your own energy here and be the role model for the balance and well-being and resilience that you want to see and need to see in your teams. And I have to say, this was a lesson I learned quite late in my own experience in my own career. And you can't get it back once you lose it. It takes a lot of time to bounce back from burnout. And I do know. So really do think about your boundaries and about your own resilience and well-being. So that's a recap: strategy, stakeholders, self. I want you to be thinking about all of these things as we move to kind of balancing these three, because it's the dance that we're so good at in internal comms. Only we can master it, which is why we're asked to do these things. But we need a way to kind of find our way through. What I want you to do first, so in coaching, I always use these reflection points. Which S needs your focus right now and why? You can share in the chat if you would like, but reflect privately. Just have a moment, take it away from this conference and think about that, whilst we get on with the business of getting clear on how to lead change. So we love an acronym and a framework in comms, don't we? I try and get away from them, but I can't. I'm going to take you through what I call the CLEAR model. And this is exactly what I used in the National Health Service when I was leading the comms for this change. So we're going to go through each one briefly, because I do want to leave time for questions. And I'm very aware of the ticking clock next to me. Thank you so much for putting that there. ContactMonkey. So the C is for context in our CLEAR model. You have to be able to anchor your messaging around the change to the strategy. You have to give it context. Otherwise, people are going to be very, very, very confused. So I can tell you in the NHS example, of course we use this. We use a lot of what I talked about: changing times, changing services, the changing needs of patients, the changing skill set and talent availability of staff. All of these things helped give context to what we knew we needed to position as the future, which was bringing these organizations together to give people more choice, more access to better services, and more development opportunities for staff. So that really helped us give us context, which helped us give a collective vision of the future and tell people why this change mattered. What are the consequences? What are the stakes? The L is for listening. So listening is a leadership superpower. I know you know that, because internal comms is all about, or should be all about, good listening. You're going to engage your stakeholders. You're going to listen to understand. Don't just tell them what you want to say. Ask them what they need to hear from you in order to make that change stick or to make it relevant and compelling. Meet people where they are, as I said. You can't take them further down a journey than they are at the moment. You've got to go with them on that journey. You've got to help them see that the next step is worth taking. E is for empathy. So if you ask me as a coach what I think the most important leadership skill is, it's this one. It's empathy. You have to humanize the experience. Change is not an abstract concept. It is deeply personal for people. It's deeply personal for you. So acknowledge this. You can be very human about it. Speak like a human being, not like a drone. Drop all the jargon, drop all the management speak. Just speak plainly like a human being. Be clear, be transparent, be honest, be consistent, be grounded in what really matters. And A is for alignment. So we have to link it, don't we, from our organizational goals and that context to the individual purpose that people need to find in order to engage with or at least understand change. Because they might not like the change you're presenting, they might not feel good about it, but at least you want them to understand. So you have got to focus on that so that you can be credible in your messaging and so that your leadership team is credible too. I love this in the chat, by the way. Murray says, humanizing our work is my motto. Mine too, Murray. My actual motto is speak human. And that's what I ask every single comms leader to do. And in fact, every leader that I coach to do. So, so important. And the last is R. So in our clear model, we're going to talk about resilience. So what do healthy boundaries look like to you? Again, I kind of crossed my own boundaries in my experience. I didn't look after myself. I worked harder and longer. I had a very, very young daughter at the time. I didn't see her enough. And that meant I wasn't at my best all of the time. It wasn't good for me, but it wasn't good for the organization and ultimately wasn't good for the people we were serving. So no one was winning there. So boundaries to me are a very clear way to show people where you need to focus in order to be at your best. So really do focus on that. In healthcare, if you work in healthcare, you'll know the recovery process is part of being at your peak as a performer. If you've been through any kind of major incident process as a communicator working in healthcare, you'll know there is mandated rest and recovery after a critical incident. Because you can't show up the next day having done that for 18 hours and be at your best. So it's really, really important that as a leader, you role model these things too. So just a quick recap before we start to move to the close and questions. I want you to think about the 3S's: strategy, stakeholders, self. I know for many of you, the self really resonated. And if you're feeling that, then that is so, so important that you take that away from today. And you can apply this clear model to each of these. Think about your context and alignment with strategy. Think about listening to stakeholders and empathizing, and think about yourself and your resilience and your well-being. So as we think about then kind of the road ahead, we're thinking about change. So let's think about what our collective future looks like and what some of these changes are that we're going to have to navigate as internal comms professionals. And we're very well placed to do it, but we have to be open to these challenges, don't we? AI isn't going to replace this, but it's going to raise the bar, and it already is, on what we can do quickly and efficiently. And that should be good for us. But what it also means is we have to think a lot harder about what is our unique blend of skills and expertise, our superpowers working in internal comms that only we can provide. Now, we call them soft skills, that they need a rebrand because they are very hard. It's what I coach people on all of the time. If you want to be credible as a comms leader, you need to get a handle on your soft skills. You need to be able to harness them. That's what you need. You need to show up strategically, show contextual awareness and insight, be curious, be empathetic, and be relentlessly human in our pursuit of what makes sense for our collective futures. That is a leadership job, and that is what I focus on as a coach. And that is your leadership edge, by the way, and I want you to lean into that. That's where you're going to find your value and where you'll be received as a strategic player. You can find that edge as an internal comms leader. We know trust, again, it's on the floor, but it's the only thing that kind of really matters to our employees. So how can we preserve that trust or start to build it back up again? What can you do through your internal comms strategy to make sure that trust is at the heart of it? What's the leadership approach you recommend taking? What's the narrative? What are the channels? What are the tools that are going to help engender trust? And let's think about change. Of course, it's a cliche, but it's a cliche because it's true. Change is the only constant. So change management, if you work in internal comms, it's a discipline and a set of skills that you need, and you need to fuse them with your internal comms superpowers so that you can show up as the valuable leaders and the solution for organizations going through this change. So I would love to keep the conversation going. I can see in the chat, I know some of you, I don't know some of you. You may hear from my funny accent, by the way. It is a blend of Midlands in England and tiny bit of American, because I worked and lived in San Francisco for many, many years. And I do work with people globally on all of the things that we've talked about today. So I would love you to keep the conversation going with me and with ContactMonkey and all of the speakers here today. I joked about being one of the oldest creators on TikTok. I think I am. You can find me at Lead with Louise. It was a bit cringe to start with, and then I got over myself and somehow have 80,000 followers. So please come and join the party on TikTok. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can email me. I do coaching. I run workshops. If you want to scan the QR code, that will bring up my website. But I'd love to chat. I do love to chat, work by myself, love a good chat when I have the opportunity. We want to talk about coaching, development workshops. I am here, and I'm here for the communications profession because it was mine for so long. So what I want you to think about as we now move to some questions, I think we've got about 10 minutes for questions. This is your time to lead change, not just communicate it, but lead it. So the $1,000,000 question is, are you ready? So I hope you found it valuable today. I've loved being here for my first time. Oh, someone said they noticed my American twang. Yeah. I'm married to an American as well. So yeah, it's kind of here forever. I personally like it. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Let's get some Q&As in because I think we have a few minutes for Q&As. I'm just refreshing the blue screen of death over here and it's not showing anything. Here we go. I'm going to take some questions, as many as I can, before ContactMonkey hounds me off the screen and I have to take my daughter to her swimming lesson. So, question by Tabitha Daniels. When it comes to listening to our internal audiences, what strategies do you recommend for building feedback loops that go beyond one-time surveys? How can we use that feedback to improve engagement? This is such a great question, Tabitha, because it's exactly that, isn't it? Because you need a loop. You need to show people that you're listening to them, but you also need to show them what you're doing with the feedback. So in the example I gave of working in the health service, we had, and it is time intensive, but it deserves to be, okay? It is an investment of your time as an internal comms team and your leadership team. We had a lot of workshops. We had a lot of face-to-face focus groups and sessions. We had staff engagement groups that were set up with representatives from multidisciplines. All of that went on, and it wasn't all led by comms. We coordinated it, we gathered the insights, but it was often led by leaders, which was great. And that was a lot. It was a lot of time. It was a lot of time invested, but it was really worth it to have richer conversations. The next thing I would say is that you have to show people and share with people how you're using the feedback. And what I mean by that is it's very, very easy to say, we're listening, vote here in the survey, come to a focus group and have your leadership team look really earnest and put their listening faces on. And then you never hear anything about that feedback again. It goes into like the dark place. So you need to tell people, this is how we're going to be listening to and using your feedback. So for me, one of the easiest tactical things, we had a special newsletter just for news about the merger, and we had a regular rhythm and people knew when to expect it. And that was one of the outcomes. But I'll tell you what another outcome was. We had to tell people, this is how we're not going to use your feedback. So this is where we will use it. This is where we won't. So that involved telling people kind of where the parameters are in terms of feedback. Because we want the feedback, but it's not an open playing field here. There are certain strategic things that will be achieved and have to be achieved, and they're not going out to a public feedback or a public vote. There are some areas where we genuinely do want your feedback and we'll be able to demonstrate it. You've got to be clear and honest with people, and then they know what to expect. So that would be the answer I would give to that. Thank you, Tabitha. It's a great question. Amy says, what are your tips on how to maintain trust and transparency when information is being limited and screened before getting to you as the communicator? Amy, I really feel for you. I don't know what position you hold in internal comms, but I can say, that is the importance of whether it's you or whether it's your manager or your manager's manager. If you're going through any kind of big change like that, you need a leader in comms, in internal comms. You need someone at that leadership table So I get a little bit of I get a little bit of flack on LinkedIn sometimes because I bang on and on and on about taking your seat at the table. My newsletter is called Take Your Seat, and I have a lot of people very constructively tell me that we don't need a seat at the table because we're able to influence outside of those rooms. But I've been in that role. I've been a board level director. I've been at that table, and I can tell you, you do need to be there. You need to be there to listen to the conversation, to contribute to the discussion, to challenge things that need to be challenged, and obviously to get the information flow. So you need someone at that table. And that's why I think it's so important for comms people to go on a leadership track and to advocate for proper leadership of communications, because it's really hard to do it when you feel as if you're limited in terms of the information you can get. And if you haven't got a comms advocate at the leadership table, maybe it's not someone in comms, maybe it's the director of strategy. You need to build those stakeholder relationships at that leadership level in order to convince and show them the benefits of giving you all the information and the trust in giving you all the information, and that you will be able to channel it into the most constructive, compelling narrative for them. Hopefully, time for a few more questions. Again, Contact Monkey, please let me know when we're running out of time. And this is a great question because I have done it the wrong way in my career and the right way. Christina says, do you have any tips for protecting your energy when there are many external influences causing chaos or challenges? So I am you may be able to tell from my speaker slot today, intense person. Like, I love what I do, I'm pretty passionate. I am not really a moderate type of person, and I go all in on things. And that means that I have to be really, really conscious of protecting my energy as a person, as a professional. For me, that's where my boundaries come in. And again, I want you to think about boundaries not as just restrictions that you're putting in place. Actually, think about them as a way to show people where you're focused and a way to show people that you're committed to being at your best. And that's why those boundaries are in place. So tip number one is boundaries, but think about how you communicate the value of your boundaries so it doesn't become a negative. It actually becomes a really positive, enabling force for you as a leader and for the work that you do. External influences. So I'm not quite sure what you mean by this, but there is always a lot of noise around what we do. I would always be guided by having a really clear purpose. And what changed for me in my career in comms is when I was able to really clearly articulate my purpose, not what I did, because I did comms, but what my purpose was. And in the National Health Service, my purpose was to help clarify and engender trust in our local healthcare services with the community and to help engage our staff so that they could be at their best in caring for those people. That was my purpose. So anything else was extraneous, it was noise. That was my purpose. And again, as a coach, I will always challenge you. What's your purpose? Because you can tell me what you do really easily, I bet, and I hope you can. You can tell me what you do. Tell me what your purpose is. Why are you here? Why does the work that you do have a positive impact on your organization and its people? If you can get there, A, you're going to be a much better leader, but B, you're going to have a better time protecting your energy because anything else just becomes noise. So, next question. Amy De Silva says, how do you ensure you get a seat at the table? My favorite phrase, Amy, as you now know, for major change conversations. Sometimes the reins are held so tightly that you can't get in. It's a huge thing. You have to advocate for it, but you also have to show the value of you being there. And again, on LinkedIn, I get a little bit tired of people saying, we just need a seat at the table. Let us in, let us in. We're knocking on the door. Why haven't we got a seat? We've got to show them that it's worth it. You've got to earn the seat. You've got to show people that as a communications leader, you're there to provide value that they won't get anywhere else that is essential to good decision making at that leadership level. And there are lots of ways you can do that in your role, through your development path. It's another huge area of my comms coaching work. But that's what you've got to do. Because don't take it for granted that they know you need it. They don't. People don't know that about comms because we're actually ironically, we're very poor at articulating our own value. We don't do it enough. We don't do it well enough. We take for granted that people know that comms is important. They don't. You've got to show them, and then you'll find those doors start to open. Lindsay Keller, I recognize that name from LinkedIn. Hello. As an AI proponent, I am. How do you navigate the trust, security, and learning curve issues related to using AI in internal comms? That is a fantastic question, Lindsay. And actually, one, I'm going to be honest, I don't know that I'm even best placed to answer that. But I think Gab, who's chatting later, will absolutely be. And I know that you know Gab. I'm also a huge fan. I mean, again, it's like anything. You've got to start with your outcome in mind. What's your outcome? And what are your organizational values, behaviors, policies, and audiences that you need to consider as you think about using AI? On a side note, there is a comms and PR leader here in the UK. I'm actually blanking on her name, which is terrible of me. I have name blindness, which is one of my weaknesses. She has developed an ethical AI model for comms. I will try and think of her name, but I can't right now. She's developed an ethical AI model for comms. I've seen it. It's brilliant. And it basically pulls from the main GPT engines, but it's separate. So it doesn't go into the big kind of machine, as it were. So that's worth checking out. And if I can find her details, I will share them. Okay. I think I've got 1 more minute, so I'm going to do one more question. Let's have a quick look. Rachel Perez says, how do you best lead your own comms team to help communicate change when you personally don't agree with it or feel frustrated by the process? I want to end on this because I think that is, again, we talk about the biggest challenges in comms. This is it, guys, a massive leadership challenge. You have to be authentic, you have to be true to yourself, but you also have to think about you at your best as a leader. So you can't just be ruthlessly authentic and not have the outcomes or the interest of the organization in mind as a leader, because you are taking that responsibility on. So for me, that means you can be honest about it feeling like a big change and about there being some challenges with this change, but it doesn't mean you have free rein, in my mind, to critique it if that's the organizational direction and it makes sense, even though you don't agree with it. Because then you're in a very kind of different position. And you've got to keep your team engaged whilst being honest with them. We talked about it being a delicate dance earlier. That's exactly what it is. But that dance is a lot easier to learn. You know who you are as a leader, got to know your values, what you're going to stand by. You've got to know that balance of authenticity and credibility that you need to strike as a comms leader going through difficult change. So I hope I'm bang on time. I think I am. There were more questions to answer, and I'm really sorry I didn't get to them. But thank you, thank you. Let's keep the conversation going. And I'm delighted to see what's next because I think it's Jenny and Advita. I'm really, really excited to see them. So thank you, guys.
Louise, can you hear me? How's it going?
Yes, sorry. I didn't know I was still going to be here. How exciting.
I hear Louise though on my end. Probably with that. Again, I'm just trying to make sure that I'm able to hear you while I chat with you. Yeah, I just want to thank you so much for such an informative session. But most importantly, Louise, what socks are you wearing today?
Oh, okay. So I did promise, didn't I? And I didn't forget. I'm going to have to do some gymnastics. I'm nearly 50. So just give me a second. Hang on. Right. Blue and yellow.
You got the
That's the
CommConnect
bit
blue
when I
on.
say, yep, I was wearing them. You see, I wouldn't let you down.
Love it, love it. Thank you so much. No, thank you so much for a great presentation and reminding us of the importance of trust building as part of employee experience, how to change deeply personal, and a reminder of how to um, pretty much comms changes. Christina, anything on your end?
Well, through my experience, change is uncomfortable, and clear, confident comms really helps alleviate the fear around uncertainty. So thanks for driving that home, Louise. Internal comms is super important, especially as we manage through change.
Couldn't
Right.
agree more.
Thank you. Thank
I'll
you,
take a quick
Brenton.
5-minute
Thank you.
break. So grab a coffee, stretch, and meet us back here for Jenny Field and Advita Patel.
Can I grab a banana?
All right, I guess.
Yeah, you get me a coffee as well?
Maybe.
Thanks, Louise. See you guys soon.